Hey there, welcome back to Story Slices, where we slice through the best Reddit tales just for you. Let's dive right into the first story. The first one is the Tittle story, and it starts like this. 5 years ago, I bought what I thought was my dream home. I'm in my mid-40s, work as a civil engineer, and after years of saving, I finally found the perfect place. A modest but well-maintained house in a neighborhood with beautiful lake access. The lake access was the selling point. The real estate listing specifically advertised it. Community lake access just steps away. During the showing, the agent walked me down a charming little pathway between two properties that opened up to a gorgeous view of the water. I could already picture myself heading down there with my fishing gear after work or launching my kayak on weekend mornings. When I signed the HOA paperwork, I skimmed it like most people do. The monthly fees seemed reasonable, and the rules weren't particularly restrictive compared to other places I'd looked at. The community seemed friendly enough, a mix of original homeowners who'd been there 20+ years and some newer residents. After moving in, I invested a significant amount of money renovating my back patio. I had a contractor install a beautiful stone patio with a pergola, positioned perfectly so I could enjoy my morning coffee with a view of my walking path to the lake. I even installed a custom rack for my fishing rods and kayak paddles. The lake became central to my lifestyle and mental well-being. For the first 3 years, everything was perfect. I'd go fishing at least twice a week. On summer weekends, I'd invite a few friends over for small cookouts, and we'd often end up down at the water. I got to know several neighbors through these gatherings, mostly original homeowners who appreciated the lake access as much as I did. But about 2 years ago, things started to change. Several of the lakefront properties sold to new owners, wealthy professionals from the city who paid well above market value. Within 6 months, 3 of them had secured positions on the HOA board. The tone of the community shifted gradually. The monthly newsletter started featuring articles about enhancing property values and exclusive amenities. The divide between the original residents and these newcomers became increasingly obvious. At community events, they'd cluster together, talking about renovation projects and their boats. They began referring to themselves as lakefront residents as if it were some kind of title. The rest of us became non-lakefront residents in their vocabulary. I didn't pay much attention to the HOA politics. I just wanted to enjoy my home and the lake. But then, about 6 months ago, everything changed. I was working from home one Tuesday when I heard the sound of machinery outside. Looking out my window, I saw workers installing metal fence posts along the lake access path. I immediately went outside to investigate. "What's going on here?" I asked one of the workers. "Installing a security fence and gate," he replied, not looking up from his work. "HOA orders." "This is the first I'm hearing about it," I said. He shrugged. "Not my department. Check with your HOA." When I got back inside, I dug through my mail and found the monthly newsletter I'd set aside to read later. Buried on page 3, between announcements about lawn care regulations and an upcoming garden tour, was a small paragraph. Lake Access Update. To address recent concerns about vandalism and unauthorized use, the board has approved installation of security measures at the lake access point. Access will now require special permission and a security key. Details to follow. That was it. No prior discussion, no community vote, no details about how to obtain a key. I immediately emailed the HOA president, a woman who owned one of the lakefront properties. Her response came 3 days later. "Thank you for your inquiry. The security measures were approved by the board after careful consideration of multiple factors. Keys will be issued to select members based on criteria including property location, length of residence, and participation in lake maintenance initiatives. A formal application process will be announced next month." It was obvious what was happening. They were creating arbitrary criteria to limit who could access the lake. And somehow, I doubted my section of the neighborhood would qualify. That weekend, I watched from my patio as a group of the lakefront owners and their guests freely walked through a newly installed gate to the lake, laughing and carrying coolers. The gate now had a heavy-duty lock on it. My blood boiled as I saw the HOA president hand keys to her guests. The following Wednesday was the monthly HOA meeting. Normally these meetings had low attendance, but this time, the community center was packed. Clearly, I wasn't the only one upset about the new restrictions. When the topic finally came up on the agenda, the HOA president addressed it briefly. "As announced in the newsletter, we've implemented security measures at the lake access point. This decision was made to protect our valuable community asset and prevent unauthorized use." Several hands went up, including mine. The president nodded to an older gentleman first. "I've lived here for 22 years, he said, "and I've never needed a key to access the lake. What changed?" "We've had reports of vandalism," the treasurer responded vaguely, "and non-residents using the lake." "What vandalism?" someone else asked. "I'm down there all the time and haven't seen anything damaged." The board members exchanged glances. We don't want to publicize the specific incidents, the president said smoothly, but rest assured, the measures are necessary. When I finally got my turn to speak, I kept my voice level despite my frustration. My property was specifically marketed with lake access as a feature. It's one of the main reasons I purchased here. How do I get a key? The vice president, a particularly smug man who'd moved in just last year, leaned forward. As we've stated, keys will be issued based on specific criteria that the board is finalizing. And what are those criteria? I pressed. He smiled thinly. They'll include factors such as proximity to the lake, investment in lake-related improvements, and community participation. Another board member added, we have to prioritize those whose property values are most directly tied to lake quality. The vice president looked at me and said something I'll never forget. If lake access is so important to you, perhaps you should save up for a lakefront property like the rest of us did. Several people gasped. The meeting devolved into angry comments after that, with the board eventually calling for order and moving to the next agenda item without resolving anything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled out all my property documents and went through them carefully. In the deed, I found an important clause that stated all properties in the community had deeded access rights to the lake via the designated access point. This wasn't just an HOA amenity they could restrict, it was a property right. The next day, I emailed the board with this information. 3 days later, I received a response offering a compromise. I could apply for limited access during weekday hours between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., would need to sign in and out, and couldn't bring guests. A board member would need to be present to unlock the gate. Essentially, I could only use the lake when most people were at work, couldn't bring friends, and would be supervised like a child. It was insulting. A few days later, I was driving home from work when I noticed something that made me brake suddenly. There was a for sale sign on a small vacant lot directly adjacent to the lake access path. I'd always assumed this sliver of land was part of the HOA common area, but apparently not. I pulled over and called the number on the sign immediately. The real estate agent told me the lot belonged to one of the original community developers who had kept it when the neighborhood was built. He was now in his 80s and moving to assisted living, so he wanted to sell quickly. Has there been much interest? I asked casually. The HOA has made an offer, the agent said, but it's well below asking price. They seem to think they're the only potential buyer. I asked if I could see the property immediately. Within an hour, I was walking the boundaries of the small lot with the agent. It wasn't much, maybe a quarter acre. But crucially, it included the strip of land where the new gate had been installed. The asking price was steep for such a small lot, but not outrageous. I told the agent I'd think about it and called the seller directly that evening. The elderly owner was happy to speak with me. I've been getting pressure from the HOA to sell below market, he confirmed. They keep saying no one else would want such a small lot. Would you consider a full price, cash offer with a quick closing? I asked. There was a pause on the line. Son, are you by any chance having trouble with that new gate they put in? I admitted I was. He chuckled. I figured someone would eventually check the property lines. That gate is on my land, not HOA common area. Those new board members never bothered to verify the boundaries before they started building. So legally, the gate is on your property? Absolutely. I've got the survey to prove it. They never even asked permission, just assumed it was HOA land. 2 days later, I had signed a purchase agreement, putting down a substantial deposit with a 30-day closing timeline. I requested absolute confidentiality from both the seller and his agent, citing investment strategy as my reason. While waiting for closing, I consulted with a real estate attorney to confirm my understanding of the situation. She reviewed all the documents and confirmed that once the sale closed, I would indeed own the land where the gate was installed. The HOA installed an improvement on property they don't own, she explained. They have no easement or right to maintain that gate on your land. So what can I do once I own it? I asked. Legally? Almost anything. You could remove the gate entirely if you wanted to, though that might lead to unnecessary conflict, but you certainly have the right to control access to improvements on your own property. The closing day finally arrived. I took the day off work, signed all the paperwork in the morning, and by early afternoon, I was officially the owner of a small, oddly shaped lot that happened to include a certain contested gate. I waited until Friday afternoon before making my move. Most of the board members took off early on Fridays to get a head start on their weekend lake activities. According to my attorney, I needed to provide reasonable notice of changes to my property, so on Thursday evening, I sent a polite email to the board. Please be advised that as the new owner of lot number, which includes the recently installed lake access gate, I will be changing the lock mechanism effective 4 p.m. Friday. New access procedures will be communicated directly to community members. I didn't wait for a response. At 3:30 p.m. on Friday, just before the start of a holiday weekend, I met a locksmith at the gate. By 4 p.m., A new lock was installed, and I had the only key. I also put up a small, professionally printed sign that my attorney had advised was legally compliant. Private property, lake access by permission. For access, contact my phone number. Then I went home, cracked open a beer on my patio, and waited. At 5:47 p.m., my phone rang. It was the HOA president. "There seems to be some confusion," she said, her voice tight. "The gate lock has been changed." "Yes," I replied calmly. "As I indicated in my email, I've changed the lock on my property." "Your property? That gate is on HOA common area." "I'm afraid not. I recently purchased Lot 47, which includes the strip of land where the gate is located. The previous owner provided documentation confirming the property boundaries." There was a long silence. "We have guests arriving for a lakeside dinner in 15 minutes. I'd be happy to provide access. Would you like me to meet you at the gate now?" Another pause. "This is ridiculous. The HOA will be contacting our attorney." "That's certainly your right. In the meantime, do you need access to the lake?" She hung up. Over the next hour, I received 6 more calls from various board members, each more irate than the last. The vice president threatened legal action. The treasurer suggested I was violating HOA covenants. I remained polite but firm with each caller, explaining that I was simply exercising my rights as a property owner, exactly as they had done. Around 7 p.m., I walked down to the gate and found a group of frustrated-looking board members and their guests milling around on the path. They'd apparently been forced to walk the long way around, through one of the board members' properties, to reach the lake. "Good evening," I said pleasantly. "Would anyone like access?" The vice president turned, his face red. "This is vandalism and trespassing. We'll have you removed from the HOA." "Actually," I replied, "installing a gate on my property without permission was the trespassing. I'm simply securing my property, which I have every legal right to do." One of the other residents who wasn't on the board asked, "So no one can use the lake access anymore?" "Not at all," I said. "I'm implementing a new access system effective immediately. Any resident can text me with 30 minutes notice, and I'll provide access. I just want to ensure that all community members have the equal access they're entitled to under their deeds." Over the next few days, I received dozens of messages from neighbors. To the regular residents, I was immediately accommodating, even providing temporary access codes to those I knew well. For board members, I instituted a formal written request system with 24-hour advance notice and a $20 administrative processing fee for each access request. My attorney helped me structure this as a license fee rather than an HOA-related charge to prevent any retaliation through HOA mechanisms. The following week brought a cease and desist letter from the HOA attorney. My attorney responded with documentation of my property ownership, the lack of any easements allowing the HOA to maintain structures on my land, and a counteraccusation of trespassing when they installed the gate without permission. 2 weeks later, the HOA attorney requested a meeting. They offered to purchase an easement for the gate area. I declined but proposed an alternative. I would grant an easement only if the HOA amended its bylaws to permanently guarantee open lake access to all residents, designate the path as protected community space, and restructure board voting to prevent concentration of power. The negotiations dragged on for months. The board attempted various tactics, encouraging residents to complain about my system, trying to find loopholes in the HOA covenants, even suggesting they might build an alternate access point. But each attempt failed, as my ownership was legally sound and most residents actually preferred my more equitable access system. What I enjoyed most was watching the entitled board members swallow their pride. The vice president, who had suggested I save up for a lakefront property, was particularly amusing when he had to formally request access for a dinner party, complete with a $20 fee. "Is this really necessary?" he asked as he handed over the cash. "Just exercising my property rights," I replied with a smile. "Like you said, location matters." 6 months after I changed the lock, the HOA approached with a purchase offer for double what I'd paid for the lot. It was tempting, but money wasn't my primary motivation. I countered with non-negotiable terms. I would sell the lot to the HOA only if they legally bound themselves to maintain open access for all residents in perpetuity, created a balanced board structure with representation from all sections of the neighborhood, and established transparent decision-making processes for amenity changes. After another month of negotiations, they agreed. The board was restructured to include equal representation from lakefront and non-lakefront homes. The bylaws were amended to guarantee lake access to all residents without restriction. And most importantly, a community trust was established to maintain the lake access path, with funding from the HOA budget. Last weekend, we had our first community-wide lake event in nearly a year. Families from all parts of the neighborhood gathered for a barbecue and fishing competition. I noticed the former HOA president awkwardly mingling, making conversation with residents she'd previously ignored. Toward the end of the day, she approached me as I was packing up my fishing gear. "I have to admit," she said, "this is nice, seeing everyone enjoying the lake together." I nodded. That's all any of us wanted. "For what it's worth," she added, "I think we lost sight of what makes a community valuable. It's not just property values." I didn't say anything, but as I looked around at kids learning to fish, neighbors sharing stories, and families enjoying the sunset over the water, I knew I'd accomplished something more important than just regaining my lake access. I'd helped restore a community. The gate is still there, but it hasn't been locked in months. Sometimes the simplest solutions are just to remember we're all neighbors, not competitors, and occasionally, when necessary, to check the property lines. The next one is entitled People Story. So, I, 34F, have a preteen daughter, 11F, who is a trans girl. She hasn't started puberty blockers yet, but she's already made a lot of changes, wearing dresses, growing out her hair, and speaking in a more feminine voice. She's thriving, and I'm so proud of her for being herself. However, things have gotten pretty complicated with my sister, Sarah's, family, and I'm wondering if I'm in the wrong for how I've been handling things. Sarah has always been more than just a sister to me. Growing up, we didn't have a dad, and our mom struggled with addiction. Sarah basically raised me, and when I had my daughter, she was always there for us. After our mom got sober, she's been clean for 10 years now. She rejoined the family, but Sarah's been like a second mom to me and my daughter. That's why this situation is so hard for me, and I really don't want to cause any rifts. Sarah's husband, Tim, is very conservative, and while I've never heard him directly say anything hateful about my daughter or trans people, I overheard him once, thinking I was in another room, saying that trans people don't exist and that my daughter should dress like a boy until she's 18. That moment really stuck with me, but I didn't confront him about it because I was so shocked. A while back, my daughter and I went to a family dinner at Sarah's. Everything was fine until my nephew, Sarah's son, 12, said something that really hurt my daughter. He told her she wasn't a girl and that she had male genitalia because God gave it to her. This was devastating for my daughter, and we had to leave early because she was crying. I didn't want to make a scene, but I could tell my daughter was crushed. The next day, I met with Sarah for coffee and told her what happened. She was incredibly apologetic and promised that it would never happen again. She assured me that Tim didn't share those views, and that she was unaware he was transphobic until my daughter's transition started. I appreciated her trying to be supportive, but when we went back for the next family dinner, things took a turn. During dinner, we all held hands to pray, and when it came time for my daughter to join in, my nephew refused to hold her hand. He called her a gross tranny. I didn't hear this directly, but my daughter came to me afterward, upset and crying. My nephew seemed confused and didn't say anything when I asked him about it, but I trust my daughter. She's not the type to lie about something like that. She just wants to be accepted. Sarah claims my nephew didn't say anything, but I'm not sure what to think. I know she doesn't share Tim's views, but at the same time, I can't ignore the possibility that Tim's influence is seeping into the kids, even if it's not being said outright. Since then, I've been avoiding family gatherings because I just don't feel it's a safe environment for my daughter. I don't want her to go through more hurtful moments like this. I don't want to cause a rift with Sarah. She's been such a huge part of my life and my daughter's life, and the thought of breaking up our family over this is devastating. But at the same time, I have to protect my daughter and make sure she feels accepted and loved. So, Ida, for not spending time with Sarah's family? I feel like I'm doing what's best for my daughter, but I don't want to damage the relationship with my sister either. Update: apologies for not responding sooner to comments. The attention this post received was overwhelming, and I needed some time to process it all. First, I want to address the trolls. I get the urge to respond to them, but let's be real. These people are just attention-seeking bullies. Our responses only fuel their negativity and give them the platform they crave. Please don't waste your energy on them. To those who messaged me individually, asking questions about trans people and their experiences, while I can tell some of you are genuinely curious, I can't help but suspect that for others, it's a way to project more transphobia under the guise of understanding. If you're genuinely interested in learning, there are countless resources available online that can give you a far deeper, more articulate understanding of the trans experience than I can. I know this firsthand from helping my own daughter, and I encourage you to explore those resources. Now, onto the update. I knew that I'd have to talk to my sister eventually, but I really appreciate all the advice and support that came through in the comments. It was invaluable. I had a one-on-one conversation with my sister, where I explained that her family was not providing a safe space for my daughter. I told her that I loved her and wanted to maintain our relationship, but that I couldn't continue to be in contact unless there were significant changes. She was understandably upset and defensive, particularly of her son. She fixated on the dinner incident, while I tried to explain that it wasn't just about that one event, there were other instances. like my nephew asking my daughter why she didn't want to go to heaven or asking me if she was mentally ill. Sarah, my sister, was there for both of those moments, so I was shocked she hadn't seen the pattern herself. Yesterday, my sister reached out and asked if we could meet with her and Tim. She apologized for not listening earlier and said she wanted to find a solution. I agreed, and they came over after work. We sent our daughter to the neighbors. She didn't need to be part of that conversation. When they arrived, they were surprised that our daughter wasn't there. I told them that the conversation could be harmful to her, even if they didn't understand why. Tim was visibly upset, but I asked them if they were really ready for this conversation, and they both said they were. The conversation itself was difficult, to say the least. Tim did most of the talking. I brought up a comment I had overheard him say, that my daughter should just be a boy until she's 18. He asked me why my daughter couldn't just be normal until she was old enough to make her own decisions. I asked if he had ever done any research about trans youth to genuinely understand what my daughter is going through. He said he had all the information he needed and started going off on a diatribe about puberty blockers, which, by the way, my daughter isn't even on. I told him that we were taking her transition seriously, that she goes to therapy every other week and is involved in a local queer support group where she can talk to other trans girls and women about their experiences. Tim's response was that they were the blind leading the blind. At that point, my husband, who is usually calm and collected, was so upset that he yelled at them to leave. We'd never seen him like that before, and I think that made them realize how serious the situation was. They scurried out pretty quickly after that. This morning, my sister called, crying and apologizing profusely. She was disgusted by Tim's behavior and asked me what she should do. I told her that I didn't know, but I was certain that our families couldn't spend time together until something changed. I'm especially let down because, for a moment, the meeting gave me hope, but Tim completely shattered that hope. He didn't even try. He went off on so many horrible things, not just transphobic, but also sexist and homophobic. It was hard to follow because he just veered from one hateful rant to another. It's difficult to imagine that someone with that mindset has the capacity to grow or change. While that conversation was deeply painful, I'm also grateful it was so clear. It's never been more obvious what needs to happen, and I don't feel any guilt about it anymore. Thank you to everyone who gave advice, support, and validation. Your words helped me clear up the fog of what-ifs that was clouding my judgment and gave me the confidence to move forward. I appreciate every single one of you who supported my family. Thank you. The next one is entitled People Story. First-time poster here. Sorry for the long text. I made bold the only important section in my rant since I know I ramble. Here's our characters. I'm 17, want to be a chef, already got accepted into a culinary arts college, trying to get a dorm because I hate my grandma. Never got along after the first time my mom left me with her when she went overseas. Mom's in the military, has to go out to sea again despite her wishes. Grandma's like 80 to 90, gonna be honest. I don't care enough to know her age. I have no hatred to my mom for it, I understand. Only family left to watch me and my 5-year/0 brother. Not the best choice, just the only one. Her emotions flip-flops. She normally doesn't eat my food outside of rare moments of taste testing. Diabetic. Brother, 5M, told him if he stopped misbehaving and targeting me I would give him pie. He hasn't stopped, so I stuck to my word after double-checking with my mom, sister, and an Am I the a-hole variant subreddit when declared a douche but not an ass, dash 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 dash. People say my cooking is good, but I noticed a reoccurring issue. I can't properly control how to get it to look good without messing up the taste slightly. This is specific to sweets and baking, nothing drastic but details that can make difference between getting seconds or not. So during spring break I decided to practice 3 meals in my problem area. Since prom is coming up, the theme is desserts. Key lime pie, yogurt, chewy caramel candy. Trying to make sweets to get a sweetie. Normally either my mother or my grandmother would buy the ingredients, but my gut was screaming at me to get it myself this time as I might get guilt-tripped for not making my brother any. I asked my mom for $30 in exchange for chores, clean the garage, and before I did the other stuff she gave me an extra $20 because she loved it so much. My Aunt C gave me $20 randomly and I appreciated it. I got $60 worth of ingredients for a good deal. When making a pie batter, my grandmother came back from smoking and was on the phone with my auntie. She saw the food and complimented me and asked if I was planning on sharing. I said yes and offered my grandmother some. She declined. I told my mom in advance I made pie, wasn't giving any to my brother who was misbehaving, and I offered it to my grandmother who doesn't normally eat my food, and she said no twice. She understood. When baking it I asked for her input since this the first time I make pie outside of class, officially my second time. She made pie before so I thought I should ask. When she told me to let it cool I specifically asked her again if she wanted some. She said no. I do have autism so maybe this isn't normal, but I normally ask 2 times in the cooking process, the before and after phase. Whatever you say on the second phase is your answer. I'm not going to beg you. When I cook outside of class, I don't offer it unless it's my second time making it, as to not make anyone sick. I am my own test subject until I'm confident, but I made an exception because of the dish. It actually turned out great. I probably should have put it in for 5 more minutes, but it was overall pleasant and the flavor was good. When done, she went to sleep. I texted my mom, asked if she wanted me to put half a pie in her mini fridge so she could have some. She said yes, so I did. Later, my grandmother was leaving as I was coming downstairs and lectured me because I refused to make her or my brother any, specifically that I never offered her any. I corrected her and she said I never did. She said she was going out to buy them a pie and not to touch it. In that moment I was glad I used my chore money so I had some leverage, told my mom, and my auntie who was on the phone, my sister, and they all agreed with me that I was in the right. For weeks my grandmother has been gaslighting and lecturing me on my disrespectful behavior when in relativity she was having memory issues. When they came back they didn't have any, but it would have been funny if it was also key lime. If I didn't know any better, she probably wanted me to cut her a slice and hand it to her, but that's rude emo, so I didn't. Before you ask how I ate a whole pie and half a can of Cool Whip by myself, it was a small pre-made crust. There's no damn way I'm tackling dough for a long time. My mom said I can give my grandmother and brother her pie to calm them, but I told her, love you mom, you keep me sane. I think she's going to be mad regardless, so I'd rather you have it since I know you're chill like that. I refuse to be a kiss ass since she's getting angrier with age. My grandmother has been gaslighting me and been making me question my own memories for months since she'd been here. Now when I do something, I have to get witness so she can't lie about what I do. Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow at Story Slices.